Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Planning Commission podcast. Today's episode, Blue Zones with Shelly Trumbo, Chief Transformation Officer.
The Planning Commission podcast is a discussion you never even knew you needed. Sit back, join us for a conversation between a couple of old friends and their guests to talk about all the things that are happening in this wide-ranging profession called planning. Our views are our own and don't reflect those of any national planning organizations or any particular public agencies and only belong to us. So read your commission packet, know your Robert's rules, and enjoy this, the Planning Commission podcast.
All right, everybody, let's take some roll. Commissioner Minshaw, you here?
Present.
All right. And Commissioner Kostelik, oh, no, he is out again doing his thing. So we have the ace in our ace in the hole, our A number one man coming off the bench, swinging for the fences, Commissioner Mark Fenton. Mark Fenton, how are you?
Happy to be present, sir. Just delighted to be with you guys.
All right. Well, our agenda today is our discussion item, whiskey pairing, our interview with Shelly Trumbo, and our lightning round. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Oh, double. I like it. Triple. All right. So what the heck is a blue zone anyway? Well, Shelly's going to talk about that a lot better than we can in just a minute, but I'll give you a little bit of a hint. If you don't know what it is, or you haven't seen or heard any of this discussion, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but a big component is longevity, a healthy, fulfilled life. How do we get to that point? What are we missing in most of our communities across this country to get to that point? What can we learn from other places, or mostly around the world, but also in the United States, that can get us to that point? So I'm going to ask the two of you a pretty deep question. You weren't prepared for this, so I'll give you a minute. I want to know, what can we do in the planning profession? Is there a policy? Is there a plan? Is there a process that we should be doing better on, or you could change? Anything that you could point to that, if you could, would in fact really bring about longer life for us your fellow Americans? What's that longevity sort of lever, if you will? What's something that you think is broken that maybe we could fix if you could? Do either of you have something? If you don't, I'll jump in. But if you have something, Mark's shaking his head. Sabrina's thinking, I can see that. I would say a hamster wheel, but that's mean. I'll give it more than that. The circuitry. How about that? Mark, go ahead. What do you got?
I think we got to go back to zoning rural communities for free range kids. And I think a starting point would be, let's go back to neighborhood schools. Let's let most kids walk and bike to school. So they learn those skills when they're young, long before they get car keys in their hand. They appreciate having a bicycle. They appreciate that freedom is your own 2 feet, not a car. And if we could move back to a world where kids start as free range, I think we set them on a path to a lifetime that would look a lot more like the Blue Zones prescription, actually, where you stay active all the way through your lifespan. So I'll put that on the table as I think a systemic change. If I had the magic wand, I could change that everywhere in the country. Boom, that would be it.
Boy, that neighborhood school issue, right? And the concept of neighborhood school versus this movement toward charter schools, and what a deep issue that is.
And I know it's heavy. Yeah.
You're talking about, sort of this the idea of, I guess the argument being, are some of our public schools in some ways broken in a way that charter schools fill the void? That's a whole other chat. But to your point, neighborhood schools in particular, geographically neighborhood schools, and we've had this discussion about big box schools and how, because they're so large, having to put them on the periphery. But man, I know you're I love it. I just worked in a community not long ago where charter schools reign, man, for the most part, and people are going all over the place, to get their kids to and from, and missing that opportunity. So yeah.
And remember what a neighborhood elementary school was as an institution. So much more than just school happened there, right? Community activities and events. The playground was a neighborhood playground. The ball field was a neighborhood ball field. They really were important institutions for social gathering, for connectivity at the community level. And again, all characteristics of blue zones communities where we talk about
Mm-hmm.
social connectivity and things being really important too, right?
Yeah.
So, I just
Yeah,
put it
for
out
sure.
there for our
I
pondering.
like it. I got it. I like it. Sabrina, you ready? You got one?
I'm ready, but Mark,
All
that's a
right.
great one. Our neighborhood school isn't that far from us, but we have a very intact neighborhood, and it is fascinating on that connections. We can talk about it later. Just when people are looking for their kids, what do they say? They're like, "Hey, they're down at the clubhouse, or they're probably out in the park," and whatever parent happens to be there is yelling at them to go home. Anyway, so that's it. So you're going to be shocked by what I'm going to say, and I'm not attributing this to my jurisdictional position. So we'll put it that way, since I work for local government. Um, I would completely unwind or at least reboot traditional zoning.
Mm.
Um, we have a lot of kind of rural and suburban and areas, and it surprises me at things that the market factor or people know they need for connections, whether that's, a neighborhood, uh, store or coffee shop of some sort, or even just the work from home opportunities, or somebody who has more land and wants to have other businesses. I think we are so black and white because we're, yes, protecting other people's property value, but we've lost the humanness in how we do zoning. So I know that's like a major revelation one, but
No,
it's
no, no,
been on
no.
my mind.
No, we're gonna be batting 3 for 3 on this because
Okay.
I'm in the same camp, and I would take it similar to what you just said, Sabrina, with the notion of neighborhood commercial, and what's missing there. And the irony, man, this is the irony to me. And I think all three of us have worked or work in places where there is this general philosophy that let the free market work. But yet, but yet, we are so prescriptive in our zoning that that's exactly the opposite of what we're saying out loud that we think we should be doing, and saying that no, we have to have a certain amount of parking, or no, we can't have this use over here, for this fear that the market is going to do something that we don't like. When I would argue, for the most part, I think that's a pretty unfounded fear. I mean, it's not like you're gonna get, I'm just picking a big box at random. You're not gonna get a Home Depot that wants to just buy up 50 homes in the middle of a subdivision and go, yeah, let's put it here. That's not how it works. They have their own, market needs. But that notion of neighborhood commercial, to me, is such a lost thing. And again, having worked in a place not long ago, oh my gosh, man, people were petrified that an ice cream shop that might have, I don't know, I'm just 20, 30 flavors or whatever it is, kind of a thing, with 3 or 4 tables. Holy cow, they might take up somebody might drive there and take up a parking stall somewhere near my home. And nope, can't do it. And it's just like we're just paralyzed with fear when going, gosh, man, it can be better than that. And that social cohesion, these little pockets, like Sabrina was talking before we started this about, the Indian Creek area kind of has a lot of those types of shops, and that the way that it's designed, that interaction. And Mark, you've worked all over the country and seen so many examples of that smaller scale that is appropriate and nearby, or even within neighborhoods, and how that works for people in our area. There's a few examples. I mean, we have one in the north end of Boise called Hyde Park, where, are you kidding me, there's people all the time. There's probably about 10 to 15 different neighborhood scale businesses of varying type, and then there's a really great park that's a block away or so, and it's just constantly thriving, surrounded by homes. And I don't know, why can't we replicate this in other places, for all the benefits that could stand to gain from it?
And would you agree, Chris? Those are some of the most desirable neighborhoods. The neighborhoods surrounding up
Of
there, that's where people
course.
want to live. That's where people want to live.
Yeah.
And when I visited Boise, when I've been to any of those businesses, I've always been on foot or by bike. I don't think I've
Yeah.
been, because it's almost a pain to drive. It's ideal to ride your bike, right?
Well, yeah, there's the irony,
Well,
is some of the most valuable neighborhoods around have this very component, but
mhm.
yet it's prohibited in many other places. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't understand. How's that work, So anyway, yeah, all things that we're gonna talk a little bit about with Shelly in a minute. So All right, we're gonna flip around. Good discussion. We're gonna flip around our agenda a little bit today. We're gonna do our whiskey pairing next, and we're gonna throw a curveball at you, and we're gonna have Shelly Trumbo do that momentarily. But just as a reminder, first, a couple things. Head on over to the website. Reminder: www.theplanningcommissionpodcast.com, YouTube, Amazon, Apple. Like, subscribe, and email us at planningcommissionpodcast@gmail.com. And also make sure that you go over to Planet Edison because we want to take a quick moment, thank them for supporting today's podcast. So if you're looking to sharpen your urban planning skills and advance your planning career, head on over Planet Edison Courses, which has 300 courses on cutting edge planning topics and skills such as parking reform, missing middle housing, equity analysis, and climate resilience. Visit courses.planetedison.com/PC10 to take advantage of an exclusive offer for Planning Commission podcast listeners. Now, Chief Transformation Officer. Are you kidding? Jeez, I can't even make up a title for myself better than that.
That's such a cool title.
It is, right? Shelly Trumbo. First of all, welcome to the Planning Commission podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here.
Likewise. So we're going to let you just take it away. Our whiskey pairing. It's all about blue zones and so forth. So what do you got for us? What are you thinking? What pairs well with this topic today?
Well, there's a quote from a song that says, "My favorite wine is tequila." So I'm going to turn that around and say my favorite whiskey is wine.
All right. Okay. Okay. And if you're going to pick something up, what is your go-to wine choice?
Well, I live in a rural community in Northern California, up above Napa wine country. And over the past 20 years, the wine sort of industry, or I would say the wine growing, has encroached up into this rural area where I live. And the wineries, the business owners, they bring so much vibrancy to our community. There are tons of philanthropy. It's where you can go get great music, good food, and some great wines. Some of the whites are starting to win international recognition, especially others as well, not just whites. So I love supporting these local businesses. I do enjoy wine in moderation, appropriately, according to, we'll talk more, the Blue Zones way. So yeah, I would say I'll throw them out here in case there's any Northern California, or if anybody makes a visit to wine country and doesn't want to pay a $200 tasting fee in Napa, come on up to Lake County, a half an hour away. Great wines. I love Gregory Graham Whites. It's a local winery here, amazing white wines. Probably my favorite winery in Lake County is Six Sigma. Beautiful property. They do mountain bike guided tours and hiking and beautiful paella nights and
Oh man,
amazing wine. So yeah. So
well,
I'm a member of all their clubs, and that's
I mean, I see Commissioner Minshaw's taking her notes. The problem for her is she comes in with one of those really cool helmets and the two flasks and straw. That's they're not going to let her in, right?
For my birthday, I got one that hangs around my neck that holds the wine glass.
Oh,
in moderation, I'm just saying.
Well done. Yeah. I gotta say though, so one issue I have, I recently went to Napa Valley, and downtown is amazing and it's cool, but I'll say this, it's so wine crazy. I couldn't even find a t-shirt for my kids. Like
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, I know the real estate obviously is incredibly expensive. They ain't making the rent paying, selling snow globes or anything like that. But man, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it was unreal how many wineries and tasting rooms, and oh my gosh, they were just absolutely everywhere. And what a serene setting as well
It's
through that
amazing.
valley.
Yeah, I mean, Napa Valley is incredible. Everybody should visit there once. And then, like I said, extend your trip, drive a half an hour up the mountain, and enjoy Lake County.
Yeah.
That's actually what I put in my notes, because we were at Napa Valley last October for my daughter's 21st birthday. And we had wished we had more time to go further out. We did most of our tastings right there, but as we drove kind of on the way back and took a little loop, I certainly wish we actually had done more out further. So I'll be reaching out to you, and I wrote those wineries down.
Excellent.
There you go. Very good. All right. Well, let's jump into the interview. Shelly, tell us a little bit about your background. I'm curious your how the heck you became interested in community health and your general journey that took you to Blue Zones. And then we'll jump into what Blue Zones is in just a second.
Great. Well, I'll pull the thread of what you said, how you became interested in community health and just this work. You know, honestly, I would say I was born into it. My dad is, my mom and dad were ministers, sort of small town, churches. And honestly, the work of community health, population health, creating community, collective impact, I saw that always through the way my parents lived their lives and investing in substance use disorder programs and cultivating community and supporting people's well-being. So I feel like that's how we lived our lives. I began what I would probably consider my professional career in education, focused in early education, quality, early childhood experiences, which I still think is the way that we change the world. So I'm with you, Mark. I think investments into early experiences is where the magic is. I focused a lot on child family resiliency. And through that work, I started participating in learning about collective impact and that broader lens of community and population health. From there, I moved into healthcare, really focused the same work I kind of think of, but from a different chair, a different ecosystem. So in there, I focused a lot on the social drivers of health, worked a lot with vulnerable and underserved individuals, transitional housing, substance use disorder, those kinds of initiatives. And eventually I became vice president of well-being for a large nonprofit health system, where I was able to really focus on strategic population health investments. And I think in that chair, all those chairs, I too often experienced what I think of as the classic pitfalls of population health transformation. There's this idea of something called the Hawthorne factor, where it's like a finger in the water glass. Once the big grant's gone, once the spotlights are over, a lot of times it's like those initiatives were never there in the first place. I saw amazing leaders and communities with their pockets of money and their pet projects competing with one another, and none of it having sufficient momentum to move forward. A lack of sustained leadership where these initiatives always, peter out. And it was through that I discovered Blue Zones, and I saw something different and became excited about investing, not to use an overused phrase, but really investing in upstream instead of after the fact. And so that's kind of led me to my role today.
That's awesome. So I want to know a little bit more just about Blue Zones. Kind of what is it? How did it come to be? To be honest, I've heard a bit about it. Chris has talked about it for a bit, but I didn't really register it until, oddly, I was on my daughter's Instagram, who's 21, and she had a picture of, she was cooking dinner with her fiance, and she had the Blue Zones cookbook out, and that's what she had out. And I thought, wow, my 21-year-old has really looked into this, and she was all excited. So besides just the cookbooks,
yes,
kind of what's the whole suite and package of how this came to be, and how did it transform into something like cookbooks that a 21-year-old in Idaho now is engaged in?
Yeah. How did it come to be? I'll give you the quick high level cliff notes. Mark, you probably know, you could probably tell these cliff notes better than I. So interrupt me if I say something wrong. I'm going to say about 30 years ago, a gentleman named Dan Buettner, a very interesting human being, partnered with National Geographic and the National Institute on Health on a really unique project. Originally, I've heard stated that he was sort of charged with finding the fountain of youth. Traveled all over the globe, partnered with demographers, scientists, researchers, didn't find the fountain of youth, but did find 5 demographically confirmed geographic locations where entire populations of people were living exceptionally long, healthy lives, really high well-being, at rates, they were living into their hundreds at rates of 10 times what we see typically and what we see in America and other developed countries. So they confirmed this really this really exists. These 5 defined locations exist. The data really showed the phenomenon. So then the team, I think with additional funding from some of these organizations, went back and really, I would say, immersed and embedded themselves in those cultures to see if they could figure out, methodically distill what made them different. What were commonalities? Were there any commonalities? And from that research, a formula emerged. A formula that I think of at its essence is really a story of thriving elderhood. A story that encompasses the teachings of how to be well from traditional cultures around the world. So those are distilled into a formula called the Power 9. Came back and asked the question, could we look at American communities and start to re-engineer them so that they could, over time, become more closely related to these 5 cultures, and thereby shift some of the trends that we see in America. You know, we're a nation that spends more than any other country by far. You know, gosh, I think we're up to, well, by far. And yet our health comes are not even close to the top of the list, and they're getting worse every day. And so, you know, is there a way to take these learnings, distill them, and start to re-engineer American communities? So, Sabrina, to answer your question, they began, I would say about a decade ago, piloting these initiatives, partnering with communities who wanted to think about their community in a different way, found some amazing outcomes, some amazing results, continued to refine, to learn, and led us where we are today. And Dan is still an explorer, still a researcher, and does, you know, he's now, his cookbooks are a part of just the extension of his exploration and his learning and his research.
That's a fantastic background. Something you said, I want to do a quick follow-up because I know Mark has a question, but you talk about health, right? Like it's indicators of health. My assumption from reading them in the literature, but maybe you could address it, is that health isn't just physical health. It's also mental, society, community health. We've had some recent podcasts about how crucial that is and how it really is linked back to physical health. So can you just talk about kind of when the Blue Zones group and when all these resources talk about health, what do they mean by health?
Yeah, we define health, we define our measurement framework by well-being improvement. So we partner with Gallup, and actual measurable, sustainable well-being improvement is our master metric of everything we do. And I love that you call that out, Sabrina, because that was one of the things, if I could take a little bit of a rabbit trail of how I found Blue Zones, and it kind of answers that question. So in the community where I live, I feel like I'm doing a commercial for Lake County, but we experienced that overwhelming 5 years of wildfires, you know, still at risk, obviously, but there was about a 5-year period where just, you know, a significant percentage of our community was destroyed every year by fire. The very first one was in 2015, not the first fire, but the first sort of this big series of disasters. And my house was lost in that fire. And, you know, at that time, I've always been what I would call like a self-improvement leadership junkie. I mean, I read every book, I distill the truths, I do all the habits, you know, I'm into that stuff. It's my hobby. And after the fire, I was really almost like obsessively looking, like reading all the books. How can I recover? How can we get back up from this? And in that, I found Blue was the first time I had ever read the Blue Zones book. And there was something about it that just to me was like, it was different. It was real. And when I looked around at my neighbors and my friends who were recovering and were thriving and were experiencing purpose and meaning in their lives, they were individuals who were living according to these principles that Blue Zones has in their work, the Power 9. A lot of people think, because of the cookbooks, probably emphasizes that too, that Blue Zones is all about diet and exercise. It's a diet and exercise program. I would say, from my perspective, diet and exercise are the last 2 bullet points of what Blue Zones is all about. It's about purpose. It's finding meaning in your life. It's learning how to have balance and thrive and have lives of meaning in this harried culture that we live in. It's about connecting with family and friends. It's about surrounding yourself with people who are on the same path with you, putting your loved ones first, belonging to a community. And yes, it's also about natural movement and eating foods that are healthy for you and nourish your body, that are, are more plant forward. Yes, those are on there too, but it's really about creating cultures that we all really want to live in. That's what Blue Zones is about. And that's what gets me excited.
Yeah,
So
that's
this is
awesome.
interesting because it builds on our opening conversation, doesn't it? Around, remember we talked about neighborhood schools, neighborhood connectivity. What can American cities learn then from these Blue Zones principles? Because we know that longevity, even within cities, we see 20 and 30-year life expectancy differences in different parts of the same urban areas, or certainly across our states, right? There are these dramatic differences. What principles can we see from Blue Zones that we ought to be applying as we think about the construct of our cities and towns, from urban to rural? Do you feel like there are some important lessons there?
I do, Mark, and I feel silly answering that question with you in the room. I feel like I'm going to make like some really broad comment and then toss it right back to you, right?
That's good. That's good. That's good.
I mean,
Big picture, because I'd like your perspective on this. You've got to look at it like this. I'm down here thinking, I want more sidewalks, right?
Right.
Right. And sometimes the macro picture is more important, though. Start there.
The macro picture to me, I mean, just in the moment, the thing that comes to mind for me is what was learned from these communities is that not in any of them was health pursued. Nobody went on a diet. Nobody joined health clubs. Health was not pursued. That wasn't the point. It was about health, well-being, creativity, joy, connectedness, mental health and well-being. All of those things were natural byproducts from this environment that was created. And yes, then how that environment is created, Mark, are all those little details, including the sidewalks and the parks and all of those things. There's zillions of details there, but at a high level, to me, that's the big takeaway.
That's actually perfectly relevant, because then it's down to those details that we have to think about. How do you create that fabric, a physical fabric that reconnects the social fabric, right? How do you design a community? That's what you're getting out of it. Yeah.
It harkens me back to a moment when I used to be a personal trainer years ago. I learned real quickly about the human psyche, and specifically the American human psyche, and had so many folks that would come into a gym with the intention of changing lifestyle. And I hate to say it, but way more did not change anything, unless it was for a very short period of time, than did. And I'll give you an example of a question that was always said, or something that was a statement that was said, to your point, Shelly, which is, oh, I'm going to go on a diet. My response was always, cool, when are you going to come off of it then? Because if you go on it, then the assumption is that you're probably going to come off of it. And that's not to be, disparaging. It's just meant to suggest that, man, that's not how it works. It's not just a temporary thing, and then we go right back to the very same things that was causing us to reach out in the first place, right? And like, I know for me, I question. I mean, I am one of these people, admittedly, that's a gym guy. I love going to the gym. Was there, even this morning, because it's just part of my DNA. And I get asked that kind of a question, like, what keeps you going? Why? How? And I've thought about that a lot over the years. Like, is it certain type of exercise? No. Is it certain type of results? No. My answer has changed over the years, and my answer is it's my passion. It's just an emotional connection that I have with something that I'm enjoying doing, and the environment and the results or whatever, it's all part of it, but it's just part of that day-to-day DNA experience. And I think what you're talking about, Shelly, is that's exactly the kind of thing that Blue Zones unearthed around the world, right? Which is being around people, gardening, walking long distances, because that's just what you did, and it was just the type of living that people pursued. And down in California, the folks who would be vigorously exercising, that was part of their day to day, part of their religion, in fact, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it. I want to ask you though. I am curious. We do talk obviously about planning, but planning is a broad tent, right? We've discussed over 50 something episodes of this podcast with all kinds of people that represent what we would consider to be planning. What type of planning work does Blue Zones get into? And the ways that maybe it helps and ultimately does move that needle.
Well, if you would allow me, Chris, I'd love to just say I recognize this is a planning podcast. That's what we're going to dig into. I do want to say the Blue Zones model, we use a model called the life radius model. It's based on research that says that human beings typically live somewhere around 90% of their lives within a 10, 15, 20-mile radius of their home. So if you can make changes to the environment in that life radius, you can begin to make permanent, semi-permanent changes so that this idea of health ensuing, right? Not pursuing. These healthy choices are easier and avoidable. We work in 3 pillars: people, places, and policy. And I want to emphasize that we put just as much focus and energy and discipline and research into the people and places pillars as we do in the policy pillar. So I did want to call that out, that Blue Zones is not just a policy, although we do recognize policy has, I think, an outsized impact on the work that we're doing. So with that in mind, I think one of the things that we're known for is just creating those healthier, more connected communities through land use and transportation planning. Things like, and I'm going to read a list: safe routes to school plans, trails connectivity plans, walkability and traffic calming, active transportation, parks and recs master planning, signage and wayfinding plans, placemaking, tactical urbanism, and community engagement and outreach plans are I'm literally read a list there. I think in the term of broader planning, there's a lot of work around. Typically what we do in a Blue Zones project is we work with the community in what we call a foundation phase, which is just a very deep discovery, listening, understanding what is this community ready for? What are the partners willing to get behind? What can we make happen here? And that's where we're prioritizing some of those things in a way that often lifts and pushes over the edge, if you will, those things that people have been working toward for many years, sometimes decades. On the more like a health and well-being, more food type front, we do work bringing farm to fresh produce to cafeterias, connecting surplus grocery items with hunger relief efforts, working a lot in the area of nutritional education, well-being policies in schools and work sites, grocery stores. Also do focus on alcohol and tobacco policy. Do a lot of partnership around community health needs assessment and community health improvement plans. I mean, that's where I introduced to Blue Zones in my own personal life, but in my role, I led all of our community benefit investment strategies for our nonprofit health system, and was frankly becoming disillusioned by the $100 billion that American hospitals invest in community health improvement strategies. And there's good things going, but by and large, there's not a lot of rigor to measure those investments. And I wanted to say, gosh, is there a model where we could invest our community benefit in a way that has a true value proposition, where Blue Zones goes at risk for the outcomes and the measures that we're claiming we can achieve, and where I can really do something meaningful with these dollars. So we do partner a lot with community health needs assessment collaboratives, community health improvement plans from those collaboratives, and really helping them see, could Blue Zones be an initiative that addresses many of the priorities that they've identified through those processes. So
those are all lists of plans that we all really get excited about, especially Chris. It sounded like we were reading his resume. Just all the great things that we're involved in that we know are good things, right? That we're starting to see really catch on. My question is about, I guess, either just obstacles or implementation, right? So especially in America, I mean, you can speak to this internationally, but in America specifically, what kind of obstacles are you seeing when it comes to making it stick, right? I mean, our original question was about adoption or adoption of plans, but I don't, my history, and I love you to talk about this, is I don't always think it's the adoption of the plan that's the hard part. It's doing something with it so it doesn't just sit there on the shelf. What are you seeing with obstacles, and is it different in the US?
What am I seeing with obstacles? A primary barrier to any broad population-wide collective impact movement moving forward is leadership. Full stop. If you do not have a strong, collaborative, respected leader in a community who is willing, theoretically a group of them, but you got to start with one maybe, who is willing to make this work their platform and hold that space for it, it is not likely that anything significant will be able to be sustained. So investing a lot of time and effort into cultivating that kind of leadership, partnering with that kind of leadership, investing significantly in the high functionality of your governance structures and community for this kind of work. I know that's maybe not the sexy stuff, but without it, it does not matter how great your ideas are. It doesn't even matter how much money you have. I mean, we see it again and again, millions and millions of dollars poured into communities through evidence-based, research-founded work that, 5 years later, leadership changes happen, or, things like that change, and it's just gone. So that would be number one for me. I'll also say, Blue Zones works with this idea of a tipping point, right? Having enough momentum in a community and enough awareness in a community where it becomes self-sustaining. It just that ball starts rolling, that flywheel, whatever jargon you want to use. And one of the things I think is so brilliant about Blue Zones is it is accessible by everyone.
Mm.
It does not matter if you are an elementary school student, a senior. It doesn't matter if your education level is junior high or, PhD. There is a place in the Blue Zone story that will resonate with you and that you can grab and hold on to. And that is the magic sauce for transformation, in my opinion. A lot of these initiatives that happen, you read the grants and it's like, there's nothing sticky about what the grant is called, about how it's communicated. And typically the investments in communication around the work are seen as, okay, yeah, we'll put a $10,000 communication budget in this multi-million-dollar grant that's coming to a community because it's not seen as the real work. Blue Zones is magical around the communication that creates this just groundswell of understanding, awareness, morale boosting, common understanding across the entire community. And so I think that overcomes a lot of the things. I think your question was, why don't communities maybe engage in this work, or what prevents them? And there is a certain amount of readiness that is required for a community to be successful at this level of change, right? There has to be high level collaborations already happening, proven ability to work together, trust. Nothing will move forward without that high trust. So I think those are some of the things that prevent a community from either saying we can do this or we could do this right now. It might be something in the future.
I love this notion of being egalitarian too, that everybody can benefit. In other words, the idea that I don't have to be the person I don't have to be wealthy enough to join a health club or the special food co-op or something, right? That if you do this systemically and systematically, everybody's going to benefit, right? And this notion of sort of collective embrace is really important. So couple of examples, maybe could you share of places where you feel like, okay, this is, and it's happening, right? We've seen, some traction. and a couple of examples. We were chatting with one before, but where you say, yeah, and we've actually seen it does actually, it actually works, right? And these are examples of that.
Yeah, I would love to share that. I'll kind of go two responses there. First of all, this is not fast work.
Mm-hmm.
This is years of work that will just hopefully keep evolving and growing. So I'm going to give some examples of historical Blue Zones project work and maybe what you would call the early communities, because they've been going long enough that we've got some really good things. And then I'll share just some bright spots in some of our current younger projects. So some of the things that you see are dramatic drops in childhood obesity in the schools that have become Blue Zones approved and have really engaged with this work. You see double-digit increases in individuals in the community in their self-reported exercise, life evaluation. Is my life going in the right direction? Do I feel good about where I'm going to be a year from now in my life? We see measurable and sustainable and upwards of $70 million in medical costs and lost productivity savings for large organizations and communities, county employees. Let's see, one of the things I love is the alignment a Blue Zones project brings to a community. Funders love that, right? It's a ready-made, high-functioning collaborative with everyone at the table. And so much of federal and state funding is so aligned with the work we do. So, in one community, we see $40 million in follow-on grants that you can very specifically point back to the fact that the Blue Zones Collaborative was part of what brought that there. The very
And
first
that includes like some transportation grants, right? We've seen folks
absolutely.
Like transportation infrastructure, update the zoning ordinance, right? Money to update a comp plan or a zoning. I'm geeking out for the planners that listen.
Please do, yeah. Make it relevant there for me, Mark.
But it's only in that, sometimes we think, sort of this stuff sounds a lot like eat your broccoli and go for a run. And there's a lot, yes, certainly we're saying, individual behavior is an important piece of the puzzle. But, my interaction with you has suggested that some of these things where you help a community be more successful when they apply for a transportation alternatives grant, because it's now part of a collective planning process that Blue Zones was instrumental in convening. I mean, that's an accurate portrayal, isn't it?
That's right. And the one thing I love about what you're saying there, Mark, is this idea of lifting all boats. It's not competitive. I mean, these are folks who were already working toward those, right? And the Blue Zones movement itself, just it's kind of like a blossom where the layers start to evolve. I'll say, so let's see, a couple, I'm looking here at a document to make sure I maybe give some hard numbers. The very first Blue Zones project where they piloted the work jumped to 34th place in the county health rankings for their state. Previously, they were 68 out of 87 counties. So, you see this kind of measurable change. No certified Blue Zones project can be certified unless there is at least a 5% sustained improvement of well-being, according to the Gallup Wellbeing Index. So you've got really hard numbers there. I'll give some recent things that I'm excited about in some current projects. So we have a Blue Zones project in Jacksonville, Florida. Amazing body of work there. One of the things I didn't mention is that when a Blue Zones project launches in a community, we hire anywhere from 4 to 20, even more, actual folks from that community, and we invest in them and train them. And, those are permanent assets just to grow the work over the years to come. So the Jacksonville team is absolutely incredible. Very recently, the Jacksonville Smoke-Free Park Ordinance was passed. Huge win. That, I think the Blue Zones momentum was able to push over the edge. Bakersfield, we have another amazing project in Bakersfield. Great team there doing good work. They passed a big complete streets ordinance that, they've been attempting to work on for many years. And some of the fun, I'll list a couple of fun other data points. One of the things that a Blue Zones project does is it has a very specific number of restaurants, grocery stores, and work sites that it must engage with for Blue Zones approval status. And that's part of that spread of the Blue Zones movement in a community. So for restaurants, for instance, we would have, based on the population size, a certain number of restaurants that have to be Blue Zones approved. And that means that some healthier choices are added to their menu. We don't remove choice. All the
I was
stuff's
going
still
to say, it
there.
doesn't mean no French fries and hamburgers.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It means that
Let's have
healthy
some other
dishes
stuff.
are added,
Right, right,
additive.
right.
And gosh, in Bakersfield, that work is just exploding with Blue Zones approved restaurants. And I just got a report, I think it was about a month ago, where, let's see, they have 18, in 1 year, 18 restaurants have become Blue Zones approved. And because of that, 77 new healthy dishes are available in this, community that's not that big. And one of the things that happens is a Blue Zones project, because of the skill and investment in communication and marketing, now these small restaurants are being promoted in their community. And one example is a local restaurant in Bakersfield. Sandwich sales are up 144% since their Blue Zones approval. Vegan sales are up 171%. Online ordering up 112%, and their net sales is up 128%. So when you think about the economic vitality, that's also a really important part of the value proposition of this work.
It's analogous to what happened when we stopped smoking in bars and restaurants, right? And
Yeah,
everybody
exactly.
be a disaster for those bars and restaurants. And instead, what we saw was they all increased their income and revenue streams. Yep.
A
Great.
couple quick things, and then Sabrina's got, I know, has one last question before we grill you with good lightning round questions. But I think if Mark had his way, while he might not see a nationwide promotion of running, it would be power walking, right? And the return of the 80s era short shorts and
high socks and short shorts. Woo, woo.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
want
don't
the
know
Olivia
why.
Newton-John. Can I get that Olivia Newton-John headband? I mean, I did rock the 80s, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And, John Travolta, I don't remember that movie when they were, that was cringy as heck, but, nevertheless, I just wanted to follow up in Bakersfield, full disclosure, just, in that community, I got the opportunity to do some work in Bakersfield on behalf of Blue Zones. And just to give you a quick story on some context of that. So we had a discussion the very first morning with their whole public works department, but we went out and we met in the field at an actual place in Bakersfield, right? Not just in their building, not in the sort of bowels of public works. It was at a Boys and Girls Club that was flanked by two one direction, 3-lane roads, right? Streets, 40 miles an hour. And the folks who met us out there were in disbelief about that being the condition. And I'm going, y'all created this, right? Like, why are you shaking your head? This is the result of policy that came from City Hall. And one of the engineers said, oh, we also have a level of service C policy. And if you know the world of transportation, you probably could imagine my reaction when I heard that. My jaw about hit the floor. Because what does that mean if you don't know transportation? It means that the collective tolerance for congestion is very, very minimal for even 15 minutes a day during peak hour. And the ramifications of that is profound. What did I see? I saw 7, 8, even 9-lane roads all over the place, 55-mile-an-hour arterials with bike lanes that are 2 feet wide. And you're going, what are we doing? But even more than that, the brand new streets that were required as part of development were so massive that they weren't even striped. It was all about for the future because of this policy. And what you saw is 7 lanes of asphalt, but 2 striped lanes. And then evidence that somebody's having real fun at night racing and doing donuts in the intersections because they're so wide. And the impacts to the number of homes that could be built, the impact fees that are charged, it just goes on and on and on. And you're going, oh, one single policy is right there, and good for the city of Bakersfield for changing courses. All right, Sabrina, hit us with our last question, and then we're going to do some grilling of Shelly in our lightning round.
All right. So my last question is actually to bring it back around from professionally, right? We talked a lot about the inputs that we put into our job. whether Chris is talking about it being transportation or how we zone or how we plan and outputs. But for our listeners, there is that passion piece of this, right? That's what does it mean for each of us individually? So I was reading an article last night, kind of prepping for this from NPR, and they took their own words and kind of said, what are the 7 things that you can do under this blue zone concepts? Some of them were individual, like swap your lazy boy, ditch your DoorDash, give loneliness the boot, join. We talked about that. It was social. If you were to say kind of the top 3 of as a person, if you were talking to me or my 21-year-old who kind of happened across the cookbook, what would you say? Hey, here's 3 things as individuals that you can start doing, thinking differently to really embrace this culture shift. And I gave you 3, and now you have to process, right?
I'm going to give you 4. So the Power 9 is categorized into what we kind of sometimes call the 4 core. These are sort of the categorize of work.
You're a woman after my own heart. Ask for 3, give 4. It's good.
That's right. I'm a giver. Stay connected is one of the categories, and that's about a sense of belonging, loved ones first, surrounding yourself with people who are aligned. So I would say one thing you could do, and the data shows it's so simple. Today, it's Friday, call somebody, call a friend, reach out, connect with somebody you haven't talked to for a while, somebody you want to stay connected to. Say thank you. Eat wisely is one category. For us, that means eating only until you're 80% full and putting plant forward, plant slant focus in your diet. So I would say there's a statement that we learned from one of our Blue Zones regions called Hari Hachi Bu, which means eat only until you're 80% full. So next week, stop eating when you're 80% full would be the second thing. Right outlook, which is about having a sense of purpose in your life and downshifting. So everybody, one thing you can do, stop working either tonight at 5 p.m. and do not work again until at least Sunday and preferably Monday. Actually do that. Take a day off, get outside, get in nature, do things with family and friends. And then the last one is move naturally. So go for a walk. I know those don't sound like they're going to be life-changing and earth-shattering, but if you did them every day, they actually would be. One last thing, there's a book called The Blue Zones Challenge, which actually helps you create your own individual lifestyle changes from sort of an individual perspective. And that's a good one to pick up if you'd like some more tips like that.
Yeah, thank you. Those are really great ones and things that I think maybe intuitively know, but maybe it's not as intentional.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
We don't think that they're going to be that impactful, but I mean, there's just overwhelming amounts of data that say they are.
Awesome. And the joys of a short or even a short walk, but around your neighborhood, the things that you see, it's amazing what you miss if you constantly are driving by them versus actually, going on at 3 miles an hour by foot, right? Yep. All right, Shelly, it's time to turn our attention and wrap up here a little bit first with our lightning round. So I'm going to pepper you with a few questions and then turn it over to my colleagues here. I'm going to give you 3. Ready?
Okay.
You've been talking too much about good, healthy food. My daughter sells Girl Scout cookies. That's not a plug, but what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Oh, Thin Mint. I don't know why they don't give your calorie counts per the entire wrapper stack. Because that's pretty much what happens.
Do Thin Mints pair with any wine? I don't know. Maybe the
a nice Sauv Blanc. Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
I've done it. That could be a full dinner one night. Yeah.
Speaking from experience. Okay. All right.
Notice how fast I jumped in with that one. I had an answer.
What was yours, Sabrina? I didn't hear you.
I would say a dark red, more like a Merlot or even a dark cab. Yeah. See,
if you go with a port, your spleen and everything is just going to explode.
There's too much mint in that for a port. Sorry.
Okay. Fair enough. Sorry. I'm a novice. I'm a whiskey guy. All right. Your guilty pleasure movie. What's a movie that you just cringe that you like? Is there something that you could think of that every time it comes on, you're like, oh, I'm totally going to watch it. I know Mark's is Princess Bride.
Oh my gosh, I do love that movie. That was one of the ones on my list, but I think since you're saying cringeworthy, Legally Blonde.
Okay.
I would have given you the Xanadu because you
like the Xanadu
roller skating.
Yeah.
I want to see Mark do that one.
Uh-huh.
Oh, he's probably done it. He's probably done it. All right, and my last one, and again, because this is in honor of Mark because of him being honest with us or being here with us today and pinch hitting. I know his first concert and talk about cringy. Oh my gosh, but maybe he can share that in a minute. But what's your very first concert that you ever went to?
Boston. More than
Boston.
a feeling.
Awesome.
Classic power rock. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Old school.
All
All
right,
right,
Sabrina, Mark, go for it.
I have two for you, then we'll let Mark go. Hopefully I won't steal his. What is your favorite outdoor activity? And maybe be creative, because we talked about getting active. What is your favorite one to do outside?
Stand-up paddleboarding.
Mm. I've just hit kayaking. I'm not sure I'm quite ready for the stand-up part, but
I love it. It's so
okay.
fun.
Second one, I might have three. This is one that came up at our office the other day, but I'll laugh about it. If you had a warning label that you should have like on your back that people would know about you up front, what would your warning label be?
Oh my gosh.
A good one, huh? Chris is gonna think of his own warning label.
For those who are listening, Shelly is holding up a mug, and what does
Yeah.
your mug say?
Your enthusiasm is scaring everyone.
I love it. That's perfect.
He's been
Thank you.
drinking out of that mug the whole time because boy, that is her through and through. That's great, Shelly.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
Mark.
Okay, hey Shelly. So we did music. Doobie Brothers for me, by the way, but I'm dating
Nice.
myself.
Wait,
Nice.
wait, stop, time out. No, it was not. Your answer was Boy George. It was Culture
No,
Club.
not my first. I said that was my most memorable because it was horrifying. That was my
Okay.
memorable answer.
You're gonna have to
My
edit
first
this out.
was
All
the
right.
Doobie Brothers.
Oh,
No,
okay.
Oh my gosh.
I stand corrected.
Thank
Maybe
you.
it
Oh
was
my
just
gosh. Thanks
burned
for
in
letting
my
me correct
brain.
the record, Dan. Put
Okay.
that in the minutes. I want that in the updated minutes from the meeting.
Okay.
Commissioner's meeting. Oh my goodness sakes. Yeah,
So
no.
sorry,
Doobie
Shelly.
Brothers,
So sorry.
fantastic. Great band. To this day. Okay. Do you play a musical instrument? And if so, if you don't, what would you play?
I do play a musical instrument. Singing is my favorite instrument. I also sort of play piano, not great, and I play ukulele.
Oh, wonderful. I've been thinking about ukulele lessons, so I'll take it on your
The
advice.
uke.
Talk about social connection. You got to go to lessons. You got to be part of a group, right? That's so great.
I believe that I learned my very best collective impact lessons from keeping bands together. If you can keep a 5-piece band actually together for a period of time, you've got great collective impact skills.
Two Blue Zones questions. If you were a healthy Blue Zone recipe, which recipe would you be?
If I were a healthy Blue Zones recipe,
Yeah. Got something in mind that reflects you.
a
your
burrito
taste?
bowl. A burrito.
Oh, okay, good.
Huh?
And if you were going to go live in one of the original Blue Zones locations, where would you pick? Not and can't pick California, can't pick Loma Linda.
Oh.
So where?
I would not pick I would
Yeah,
not
of
pick
course. I
Melinda.
know you
My
would.
favorite, hands down, especially after I saw the Netflix special, Ikaria Greece.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Great Netflix special, by the way, if somebody wants a little
Yes.
taste of the thing. And you see
Right.
Dan's passion for all of this, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, you really
And
had it.
the 4th episode really gives a bit of a glimpse of the working communities. So that's if you're interested in that piece of it.
How this isn't a closed-ended idea, but rather we can apply these principles. And even to the worst suburban sprawl,
Yeah.
US cities where you say like, it can't happen here, we're seeing great stuff happen, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
So we can, there's hope, right? Shelly?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Shelly Trumbo, Transformation Officer. What's the full title again? I'm missing it. There's
Chief
something
Transformations Officer.
Chief. But of
Wow.
course, Chief. I mean,
I know.
all right. Well, we appreciate your time. For our audience, if you're not familiar with Blue Zones, most definitely head over to their website, go on Netflix, and certainly watch the 4-part documentary that is quite compelling. And as mentioned, there's tons of books that cover a whole host of things. It's not just cookbooks. It's about even, just the general human spirit and what it takes to thrive and be happy and all of the types of emotions that we are constantly seeking. I hope that we're seeking those things, right? So, Shelly, first of all, thank you very much for joining the Planning Commission podcast. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, good. And now we know Thin Mints and a good red wine. Go for it, y'all. I mean, and enjoy the heck out of that. All right. And to our listeners, real quick, head over to our website, www.theplanningcommissionpodcast.com, Amazon, Apple. Give us a like and send us an email. We'd look forward to it. So to my fellow commissioners, first of all, thank you. Also, Mark, for pinch hitting. We always appreciate you and your spirit animal joining us. It's unleashed on us all the time. We appreciate that.
Privileged to be with you.
All right. To my commissioners, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Peace.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Commissioner Danley here. Would you like to see more? Hear more? Well, we got you covered. Go to our website, www.theplanningcommissionpodcast.com. It's got everything you want. Guests, yep, past episodes, video, the audio, even our whiskey pairing, links to everything about all the people we've had on, books, websites, you name it. It's unbelievable. If you want to reach out to us, please. We'd be more than happy to chat. You can email us, planningcommissionpodcast@gmail.com. You want to tweet at us? Go for it, @planningcommish. We're also on YouTube with the Planning Commission Podcast channel, Facebook. Heck, send us a carrier pigeon if you need to. We'd love to hear from you about ideas, guests, you name it. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. We'll keep doing our thing. You keep doing yours. Have a good one.